Yesterday, one of the things I forgot to mention on my video about the 19th interview of Megan, who was interviewing the lady, one of the things that did cross my mind, and I did forget to mention it, is that when the co-founder explained how she came about creating the 19th and all the struggle she went through and how she was somewhat forced to get the 19th started because of all the things that were going on and stuff like that. I'll put the clip here. I'll cut certain part because she sort of spread different information throughout the interview. So here are some of the parts that sort of explain that.
Better to serve this and to have a conversation asking you how this came to be and really the impact and goals that you have for the 19th, which I am blown away by, but just wanted to take the time to be able to have that conversation with you.
Wonderful. Well, obviously this is an enormous honor for us to get to be part of this conversation. I would be lying if I said this wasn't a completely surreal, amazing experience for us to get to have. And we are just really, really appreciative that these are issues that you deeply care about and thrilled to get to be in this conversation with you. So I am an open book. I'm not used to being the one in the hot seat, but go for it.
Just jump right in if that works for you.
I'm ready.
How did this come to be? Where did the idea come from? How long did it take it to come to fruition? And was this timing planned for you? Obviously, knowing that this ramp up to the celebrating the 19th Amendment, was this all part of your plan?
It honestly wasn't. This all began for me 4 years ago. Hillary Clinton was running for president. I had a brand new newborn baby girl. I was on maternity leave, and in between sort of the dark moments of postpartum depression and changing diapers and being covered in spit up, I was listening to these conversations on, 24-hour cable news around women and electability, women and likability. And it might have been the hormones talking in that moment, but I just felt enormous rage. These were still conversations that we were having in 2016. And I thought in that moment, what we really need is a new national newsroom by and for women that throws sort of those questions of electability and likability out the window and that really covers women deeply with empathy and with respect. Almost 4 years later, we were looking at a campaign cycle with more women than we've ever seen before on the 2020 campaign trail. All of these same questions were getting asked over and over again, and it just felt like a moment. I could see the light. I had a toddler instead of an infant. I thought, this is a moment, and if I don't take this moment, what a missed opportunity. So that was about a year ago. Here we are. We have just launched the 19th, the country's first nonprofit, nonpartisan newsroom at the intersection of gender, politics, and policy. And yes, as you mentioned, the world has changed in an enormous way in the last 6 months alone. And I'm happy to get into some of that conversation. But what a moment to be starting this work. We are over the moon that it's just begun. This is a moment, and it's so special to be doing this in an environment with this many extraordinary women and journalists, generation of women in the workforce. And so many of our stories are framed through that lens. The reality is, in this industry, the overwhelming majority of politics and policy reporters and editors are men, and almost all of them are white men. And what that means is that those are the people deciding what's news and what isn't, whose voices are elevated, which experts are quoted, whether those stories play on the front page or the homepage. So it feels for us critical in this moment more than ever.
This economy for attention, right? That is what is monetizable right now when you're looking at the digital space and media. And so if you're just trying to grab someone's attention and keep it, you're going for something salacious versus something truthful. And I think that once we can get back to the place, which is what you're creating here, which is why I think it's so important, where people are just telling the truth in their reporting and telling it through a compassionate or empathetic lens, it's going to help bind people as community in a way that I think at the moment we're feeling much more of a disconnect in a space where we could be feeling more of a connection.
And I think the business model plays into this, honestly. Part of the reason, honestly, the majority of the reason we launched the 19th as a nonprofit newsroom, as a member-supported newsroom, is so that we have that flexibility, so that we aren't, chasing advertiser-based clicks, so that we aren't, chasing the most salacious headline. We have the time and the space to tell stories the way that they ought to be told, to tell them with empathy, that, in ways that honor women's lives and experiences, that give them depth, Our reporters are based all over the country. They're not all in DC and New York and LA. They are in Des Moines, Iowa. They're in Orlando, Florida. They're in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They're telling real women's stories, telling those stories where they are. There's no such thing for us as sort of flyover country, right? I mean, this country is filled with women who are not monolithic. This is a nuanced voting bloc, and we ought to treat them like that.
So what I thought about it, she reminded me of how CNN got started. It was Ted Turner who started CNN, and his vision for how we saw the news or how we see the news, he created CNN, where he wanted to show people the news all around the world in real time and things like that.
I know that we will succeed, and I pledge to you that we will not let the American public down. I wanted to start the cable news network because I felt that America needed an in-depth voice in what's going on in the news, and a news service that would cover those areas like the financial news and the sports news that aren't adequately covered. You can do so much more in 24 hours than you can in 24 minutes.
If Alexander the Great could conquer the known world, why couldn't I start CNN? I thought it through really carefully, but I'd studied a lot more than most of my competitors. Most people haven't worked as hard as I have or studied as hard as I have, because when you look back in my life, most of my decisions, almost all of them, were brilliant. I got the idea for CNN for a number of reasons, but one primarily was that I worked till 6 or 7 o'clock at night. After I drove home from work, by the time I got there, the early news was over, and I had to go to bed at 10 because I got up real early to go to work the next morning, and I missed the 11 o'clock news. We didn't have a 10 o'clock news then. So I never saw television news, and I knew there were a lot of people like me. I knew that if it was on all the time, and all news radio had already proven successful. So I figured, if it worked on radio, it'd work on TV too.
And since we're going to be on for such a long period, continuously, we sign on June 1, and barring satellite problems in the future, we won't be signing off until the world ends.
It was a whole new concept, and we started with scratch against competitors. CBS, NBC, and ABC were about 1,000 times bigger than us at the time. They should have done it. They had the bureaus, they had the personnel, they had the expertise, they had contacts, but they chose not to do it because they chose to fight cable, to fight the new technology rather than embrace it. And so they left an opportunity there for some entrepreneur like me to take a shot at it. I moved very quickly. Once we made the decision to do it, we went on the air in 11 months. And we had no bureaus, I just had one employee. We had to hire 300 people and open bureaus and get the equipment in and cameras, and we got it all done. And we went on the air on June 1st, 1980 at noon, exactly when I said 11 months before.
Good evening, I'm David Walker.
And I'm Lois Hart. Now here's the news.
The first day we were on the air for 24 hours. We didn't go on with 30 minutes and then go 30 more. We started out 24/7. Yeah, once you decide to do something and you're pretty sure you're right, then you gotta go ahead and do it, because if you piddle around, somebody else will beat you to it.
Now we have MSNBC, Fox News, and all of this stuff. And the vision that Ted Turner had, it's no longer there because corporate took over those channels. And this is something we have to be vigilant about. The 19th is that I know the co-owner of the 19 did said she wanted the organization to be free. People could spread the news, you could share it. So she pretty much, the copyright of everything about the 19, she pretty much gave it away and said, you see the thing, you share it, and whatever.
I mean, I hope so. What you are seeing in, honestly, the last few days since we launched is an enormous outpouring of support. Thousands and thousands of people becoming members, supporting us with their hard-earned dollars. Thousands of additional people subscribing for our newsletters every given day. I mean, I think there really is a hunger for this kind of coverage. But for us, it isn't enough to draw readers into our fold on our platforms. Honestly, we have a moral obligation to meet women where they already are. And for me, that means making our journalism entirely free to republish by every other news organization in America. So we have launched with a terrific partnership with Univision. Univision is translating our work into Spanish and distributing it. The USA Today network is distributing our work to more than 260 regional newspaper markets, which is just unbelievable for us to be able to reach that kind of audience from day one. And then across social media, yes, there's a lot of toxicity there. If you can find your way to the right platforms like ours, our obligation really is to find women on the platforms they're already using, they're already consuming, and make sure we're getting those really critical headlines in front of them.
So I'm afraid if, God forbid, let's say it does take off further from what it is now, and, once let's say she decides to sell it, she doesn't have the energy to keep going with this. Although she's still young, but, at a certain point, people don't have the same energy to continue what they started. She could easily sell it. And for us, the consumer, the viewer, the readers, have to be careful is once she decides to sell it, the new owner, the direction it plans to take it, if corporate might take over. And this is something we have to look out for, because usually the originality of things don't stay the same.
Well, Ted Turner may have sold CNN, but you can bet he still sees it as his company. I talked to him yesterday about CNN, Time Warner, and what he would do differently.
I'd like to see me running Time Warner. That's what I'd like to see. But I'm so busy working on nuclear disarmament and global climate change.
You really would want to be.
I'm busy, and 70's pretty old to start a new job again. I'd like to have CNN report to me again. Yes, I would.
Well, you were always really good about seeing the combinations between media companies that other people, you wanted the broadcast network, and lo and behold, others eventually followed your model. You wanted a movie studio. Eventually, other cable companies followed your model. So there must be some combination now that is not being done that should be done through your eyes. All right, so short of you running Time Warner, how do you think Jeff Bewkes is doing? How do you think Jeff Bewkes is doing?
I like Jeff. But I haven't been keeping up day to day with what they're doing because I'm not a shareholder anymore.
And you mentioned that you'd like CNN to be reporting to you. What would you want to change? If CNN was reporting to you, what would you want to change?
Less fluffy news and more international news. More news about China.
Okay. Less personalities?
Yeah.
Okay.
Less talk, more news. Before AOL was put into it, then it was toxic.
What was the mistake, though? I mean, what was looking back at it? You were head of Turner Broadcasting. You had sold Turner Broadcasting to.
I had merged it. I had 10% of the stock. I thought that I was buying Time Warner, not selling to them. The management didn't come after me until after we had merged with AOL and I'd been diluted down from 10% to 3%. Then they figured they could get me without repercussions with the shareholders, because I had a really great business record up until then, and even today. The jewel in Time Warner's crown is Turner Broadcasting. It's continued to do well, whereas the rest of the company has not done so well.
Yeah. Well, Time Warner, since you left, has spun off
everything.
The cable business. AOL is now spinning off Time Inc. next year.
The magazines.
Yeah, the magazines.
I wouldn't have done that.
You wouldn't have done that. Why wouldn't you have done that?
Well, I think that having the best print media to complement the video video of the networks gives you the strongest chance of being successful into the future. And I think in spinning off Time Inc., Time Inc. is spinning off the future. When you have the Time Inc. Reporters reporting it for print, and the audio and video portion on CNN or one of the cable networks, gives you the strongest chance of getting the story and capturing the viewers, because you have something that nobody else has.
People, new owners come and they think of $, and the foundation of it no longer exists. So yeah, I thought about it, and I was like, let me share that with you guys and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share.
What feels most empowering about this moment is that I have the opportunity to elevate the voices of women and other underserved people who have been underrepresented for so long. And I feel this obligation to make the business model work, to make the fundraising work, to build this platform so that women can have their voices heard.
So basically, I just listened to the thing again. Basically, the basic concept of her platform, it seems like, I'm not a journalist, it's just what I'm seeing. It seems like she's just going back to journalism 101. Tell the story, tell the truth, and don't be part of the story. That's pretty much it. And, you know, since corporate took over, it become a business. The truth no longer matters. It's what brings the money, that's what matters. So she's just bringing back journalism back to where it's supposed to be. Pretty much, in a nutshell. That's my humble opinion. So let me know what you think.